The center beam groaned above Mara Callahan's head. She froze halfway across the barn roof, one boot planted against a rain-blackened rafter, the other searching for purchase on shingles, slick with last night's storm. 40 feet below, the dirt yard looked farther away than it had 10 minutes ago. The wind came hard off the Yellowstone country and caught her skirts against her legs. Another groan rolled through the timber. Mara lowered herself slowly onto one knee. "Hold," she whispered. Whether she was talking to the beam, the barn, or herself, she could not have said. Blood had soaked through the cloth wrapped around her left palm. Her back had been hurting since before sunrise. She had eaten half a biscuit yesterday morning and forgotten the rest. In the pocket of her work apron, folded twice and already soft at the creases, was a letter informing her that in 28 days, Hester Vale intended to begin foreclosure proceedings on the Callahan Ranch, 200 acres. 30 years of her father's life. Every fence post Daniel Callahan had driven into Montana ground. Every winter Mara had survived since he died, 28 days, and now the barn was trying to kill her. The beam creaked again. "Not today," Mara muttered. She shifted her weight toward the ladder. That was when the gate opened. She looked down. A man stood just inside the yard. He carried a battered tool bag in his left hand. His coat had been mended along one shoulder with thread too thick for proper sewing. He was lean, somewhere past 40, with a weathered face and the particular stillness of a man accustomed to arriving where nobody expected him. He looked up at Mara, then at the roof. "That left rafter goes before your center beam," he called. Mara stared at him. "What?" He pointed. 3 feet behind you, where the wood darkens near the joint. Against her better judgment. Mara looked. There it was. A shallow bow she had missed. Her stomach tightened. The stranger continued. "You put your full weight there, you may come down faster than the ladder. I know my barn." "Yes, ma'am." His answer was so calm it made her angrier. Mara climbed down. By the time her boots hit the ground, she had decided exactly how the conversation would end. The stranger watched her approach without stepping backward. Most men did. Mara was 5 feet 8 broad through the shoulders and heavy everywhere else, built less like the women pictured in mail-order catalogs and more like somebody who could lift a feed sack without asking permission. Red Willow had spent most of her 36 years behaving as if her body were a public announcement about what kind of life she was permitted to have. The stranger merely looked at her face. That irritated her too. "What do you want?" "Work." "None." His eyes moved toward the barn. "You have some." "I don't have money. I didn't ask how much yet. I have no money to pay a hired man." He nodded once as though she had given him useful information. "Mara Callahan," she said. "Elias Mercer. Eli Mostly." He offered his left hand. That was when she noticed the right. 3 fingers did not straighten properly. The knuckles were thick and crooked, the skin drawn tight over old damage. Mara looked at it once, then shook the hand he offered. Eli noticed that too. "You always walk onto other people's land and criticize their roofs only when the roof looks determined to fall on them. I had it handled. I expect you did." That answer stopped her. No smile, no sarcasm, just fact. Mara was too tired for men who spoke in riddles and too frightened to admit how close the beam had come to proving him right. She crossed her arms. "The only job left on this ranch is husband. You want it or not." She expected him to laugh. Men had laughed at less. Instead, Eli studied her for a moment. That position come with supper, something almost escaped her chest. Not a laugh, close enough to make her resent him for it. "Get off my property." He picked up his tool bag. "All right." He walked 3 steps toward the gate, then stopped. "That rafter still goes first." Mara closed her eyes. 10 minutes, she said. He turned. "You have 10 minutes to show me what you think you know." Eli set down his bag. He used all 10. The center beam had 2 visible fractures and one beginning underneath an old patch. The bowed rafter was carrying more weight than it should because a previous brace had shifted. 2 roof joints had been repaired years apart using different timber, and the newer pine was shrinking faster than the older wood around it. Mara knew barns. Her father had made certain of that, which meant she knew enough to recognize when somebody else knew more. She hated that. Daniel Callahan had once told her pride was the most expensive tool a fool could own. She hated remembering that too. How long, she asked. To make it safe, to make it survive winter. Eli looked toward the mountains. 8 days if weather holds, 10 if it doesn't. It won't. No. They both looked at the clouds gathering westward. What happened to your hand? Mara asked. Threshing machine. How long ago? 6 years. You still work? I'm standing here asking for it. That wasn't my question. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. Carpentry, framing, fences, wagon repair, planning, most anything that needs more thinking than grip. How many ranches since the accident? 11. How many kept you? None. Mara understood the answer before he explained it. Men saw damage and calculated value. She knew something about that. What can you work for? Meals. She waited. And a place to sleep. Money, when you have it. You don't know me. No. You don't know if I ever will have it. No. Then why stop here? Eli looked past her toward the western fence. Your repairs. Mara followed his gaze. The fence line was ugly. Daniel's original cedar posts mixed with pine replacements, salvaged wire, old knots. New knots in one section she had patched with a length of wagon chain because it was all she had that winter. 17 different kinds, Eli said. You counted, started to. That fence embarrasses you, no. He looked at her. That's not the fence of somebody who doesn't know what she's doing. That's the fence of somebody who's been doing 3 people's work alone. The yard went strangely quiet. Mara felt those words land somewhere she kept guarded. She turned toward the barn. Storage room off the kitchen has a cot. Eli said nothing. 3 meals if there's food, no whiskey in my house, no disappearing when weather turns. You take orders when I know better. I listen when you know better. Yes, ma'am. And stop calling me ma'am every other breath. Yes. He caught himself. Mara looked at him. Eli almost smiled. By afternoon, they were working. Near sundown, a freight wagon rolled through the gate driven by Benjamin Bird, an Apsaalooka horseman Mara had known since Daniel's time. Benjamin hauled salt tools, male hides, and whatever else could survive a Montana road. He looked from Mara to Eli, then to the roof. Storm did worse than I heard. Storm has expensive tastes, Mara said. Benjamin climbed down. He listened while Eli explained the timber problem. 3 pines down north of the creek, Benjamin said. Ice took them last winter. Still sound if the heartwood stayed dry. Mara remembered them. Eli looked at her. That could save us buying the long cuts, if we can mill them. I know a sawyer east of the river, Benjamin said. Doesn't owe Hester Vale anything. Mara's jaw tightened at the name. Benjamin noticed but did not ask. After he left, she and Eli worked until lantern light made the boards look flat and colorless. At supper, neither spoke much. Beans, biscuits, coffee. Enough. Then Eli flexed his damaged hand beneath the table. Machine took 2 fingertips and crushed the rest, he said. Most employers decide I'm half useful before they see me work. Mara tore a biscuit in half. Most people enjoy deciding things early. Eli looked at her. She regretted saying it. He did not ask what she meant. Instead, he said, Why are you doing this ranch alone? Because everyone else is dead. Plain truth, the best kind. He nodded. Later, Mara lay in bed listening to wind move through the grass. The foreclosure letter remained in her apron on the chair. The barn was still broken. Winter was still coming. Hester Vale still wanted money. Mara did not have. Nothing had improved enough to justify hope. Yet for the first time in 2 years, when Mara counted everything that could go wrong, the weight of the list felt different. There were 2 people who knew the problems now. She slept before finishing the arithmetic. The following evening, Eli noticed the foreclosure notice beside the flour tin. He did not touch it. Is that the debt on the ranch? Mara looked at the paper. Yes. Your father signed the original loan. Yes. Do you have it? Her gaze moved toward the small office beyond the kitchen. Inside, beneath Daniel Callahan's old desk, sat an iron box she had not opened since the week he died. The key hung around her neck. Mara touched it through her shirt. I have everything, she said. Eli studied her face. Then before you give Hester Vale 1 acre of this place, maybe we ought to find out exactly what your father agreed to. Mara looked toward the dark office. For 2 years she had believed she knew what was inside that box. For the first time, she wondered if that was the problem. Mara brought the iron box into the kitchen after supper. She carried it with both hands, though it was not particularly heavy. The weight came from somewhere else. Eli had already cleared the plates. The lantern on the table burned low and steady, throwing light across the worn boards Daniel Callahan had built with his own hands 20 years earlier. Outside, the wind pushed through the cottonwoods along Red Willow Creek. Somewhere in the barn, one of the horses struck a hoof against the stall wall. Mara set the box down. The key hung beneath her shirt. For 2 years she had worn it because her father had worn it. Daniel had kept it on a leather cord around his neck, even while repairing fence or pulling a calf in February mud. After his death, Mara had taken it from the small table beside his bed and tied the same cord around her own neck. She had opened the box once, the week after the funeral. She had seen his handwriting on the first page and closed it again. "You don't have to do this tonight," Eli said. Mara looked at him. "You're the one who asked. I asked if the papers existed. Didn't say you had to bleed for them after supper. I'm not bleeding." Eli glanced at the cloth around her palm. That argument might work better without evidence against it. She almost smiled. Almost. Mara pulled the key free and fitted it into the lock. The metal clicked. The smell that rose from the box was old paper dust and the faintest trace of pipe tobacco. Her father. For one terrible second, the kitchen disappeared. She saw Daniel standing at the south fence, hat pushed back, telling her not to waste good wire where a proper knot would do. She heard him coughing in the barn. She remembered his boots beside the door the morning he did not wake. Mara put both hands flat on the table. Eli did not reach for her. He waited. That helped. She began sorting. Tax receipts, cattle sales, feed accounts, land papers, a photograph of her mother that Mara turned face down without comment. Then near the bottom she found the loan. Daniel Callahan, Garrison Territorial Bank, $350, 7% annual interest, 10-year term. Mara read every line. Eli sat across from her without speaking. "There," she said finally. "Payment schedule." He leaned closer. "Anything about immediate repayment?" "No." "Change of ownership?" "Nothing." She pulled Hester Vale's notice from beside the flour tin and laid it next to the original agreement. The difference seemed small at first. That was what made it dangerous. Hester's document claimed Caldwell Vale Holdings had acquired the note legally and that full repayment could be demanded upon a change in property ownership or management. Daniel had died. Mara had inherited the ranch, according to Hester, that triggered the clause. But the clause did not exist in Daniel's agreement. Mara read both again. Then a third time, Eli placed one finger beside Hester's language. "Did you sign anything after your father died?" "Number. Agree to new terms." "Number. Receive a new loan agreement." "Number." Mara looked at him. His face had changed. Not alarm, something colder. "She isn't trying to collect your debt, Mara. She's trying to take your land." The words settled between them. Mara stared at Daniel's signature. For 2 years she had believed the failing was hers. Not enough cattle sold, not enough hay cut, not enough money saved, not enough strength. Every bad season had become evidence. Every sleepless night had ended with the same conclusion. Daniel built it. Mara was losing it. Now anger entered the room so quietly she almost mistook it for relief. "She bought the note after he died." Eli nodded. "She knew I was alone." "Yes." "She knew the roof needed work. Knew I couldn't afford hired help." "Yes." Mara stood so quickly the chair scraped backward. She sat behind that counter and spoke to me like I was some fool who had borrowed beyond her means. Eli let her pace. "She let me think this was my failure, that may have been useful to her." Mara stopped. Useful. The word was worse than cruel. Cruelty could be personal. Useful meant Hester did not even need to hate her. Mara gathered the papers. "I'm going to Clara's. At this hour she told me Turner lost his place after Vale bought his note. Barrett too." Eli stood. "I'll saddle no." He looked at her. "I need you here in case the weather turns, and Clara will talk more freely to me alone." Eli considered that, then nodded. "Take the bay. Chestnuts favoring the left front." Mara noticed he had noticed. That irritated her less than it should have. Clara Kincaid was still awake when Mara reached the boarding house. Warm lamplight showed beneath the curtains. The smell of coffee onions and wood smoke greeted Mara before Clara opened the door. One look at Mara's face was enough. "You found something." Mara laid the documents across Clara's dining table. Clara read slowly. When she finished, she sat back. Turner said his payment changed after Hester bought the note. Changed how? Suddenly, everything was due. He went to the county clerk. Filing got delayed. By the time anyone listened, his land was gone. Ruth Barrett. Same sort of thing. The Morrows. Clara's mouth tightened. They lost 80 acres. Nathan's father died believing he'd ruined the family. Mara looked down at Daniel's signature. "Where is Turner?" "Still east of town, working another man's cattle." "And Ruth rented house near the old stage road." Mara gathered the documents. Clara caught her wrist gently. "Don't rush at Hester with this. I wasn't planning to. You're angry." "I'm allowed." "You are. But Hester has spent 30 years making sure angry people look unreasonable after she finishes with them." Mara met her eyes. That landed. "Then I need proof she can't talk around." Clara nodded. The banker Mara looked again at the original agreement. A name had been initialed at the bottom of each page. Amos Weller. By sunrise, Eli had already found the same name. Retired, he said when Mara came into the barn. How do you know Benjamin rode past before dawn? Asked him. Mara stared. You asked Benjamin about my business. I asked whether Amos Weller was alive. And he is. Lives outside Billings. That's nearly a day and a half if the road stays dry. Then we leave today. Mara started to object. Eli lifted his damaged hand. You can tell me no. I'll still think it's a bad decision. Barn needs work. Barn won't matter if Vale owns it. Mara hated how often he was right. Benjamin Bird met them several miles east where the road widened along the Yellowstone. His freight wagon carried sacks of flour lamp oil and 2 wooden crates bound for settlements farther downriver. They traveled together until noon. Benjamin listened while Mara explained only what she needed to explain. When she finished, he was silent for a while. Hester sent word to 2 freightmen last week, he said. What word? That anyone carrying goods for Callahan Ranch might find Vale business unavailable afterward. Mara's hands tightened on the reins. Did she send word to you? Yes. And Benjamin shrugged. A merchant may choose who he trades with. Another merchant doesn't choose for him. He looked toward Eli. Road south gets muddy after the bend. Stay high near the cottonwoods. Then he peeled away toward his own route. Mara watched his wagon disappear. She's building walls, Eli said. I know, around everything. Credit, supplies, neighbors, reputation. Amos Weller lived in a narrow white house outside Billings with a vegetable garden and a red-painted shed. He answered the door himself. Compact man, white hair, sharp eyes. Mara gave her name. His face changed immediately. Daniel Callahan's girl. Mara had not been called that in years. Yes, you came into the bank with him, I did. 14, maybe 15. Asked me why interest didn't fall exactly with every payment. Eli glanced at her. Mara ignored him. Amos smiled faintly, asked better questions than most grown men. Something caught beneath Mara's ribs. She took out the papers. The old banker read them standing at his kitchen table. His expression hardened. This clause wasn't in Daniel's note. You're certain I wrote the damned thing? He looked at Mara. No acceleration clause. No transfer condition allowing it either. Would you put that in writing? Amos pulled out a chair. I'll put it in writing, sign it, and have my neighbor witness it before you ride away. The statement took 20 minutes. Mara watched every word appear. When Amos finished, he handed her the page. Your father always paid when he said he would. Mara's vision blurred. She blinked once. Twice. Thank you. On the ride home, Eli waited until Billings was miles behind them. You were going to cry. I was not. All right. That means you don't believe me. I believe you said you weren't. She looked straight ahead. After a while, Eli said quietly, you were his daughter. Mara swallowed. He used to take me when he made payments, said I should understand a promise before I inherited one. Eli said nothing. That was why she kept talking. He trusted me with this place. He was right. Mara looked at him. Eli kept his eyes on the road. The silence between them felt different when they reached Red Willow. So did the town. Conversation stopped in the feed store. A woman from church turned away when Mara entered. Clara found her outside. Hester's talking, about the loan, about Eli. Mara went still. Clara hesitated. She's saying a woman alone shouldn't have a strange man sleeping under her roof. Saying the only kind of man who'd stay with you is one with nowhere better to go. The old wound opened exactly where Hester intended. Mara drove home without speaking to anyone. Eli was repairing the barn door. She told him everything. When she finished, his jaw tightened. Is any of it true? Mara stared at him. That you have nowhere else. I've got 2 legs. I could leave. He set down the hammer. I'm still here because I choose to be. The words frightened her more than the gossip. The following morning, a merchant refused Eli service. By noon, Mara understood the pattern. Hester was not merely attacking the ranch. She was isolating it. That night, Mara wrote her first letter to the Billings newspaper. She tore it up. Too angry. The second sounded frightened. She tore that up too. The third contained only dates, amounts, names, and documents. Clara kept a copy. Benjamin carried another sealed packet out of Red Willow with his freight. 3 days later, Hester Vale arrived at Callahan Ranch. She stepped from her buggy dressed in black wool and perfect composure. You've made a serious mistake. Mara stood in the yard beside Eli. I've made several. You will find no credit in this county, no reliable buyer, no labor. Mara held her gaze. Amos Weller's statement is already outside the county. For the first time, Hester's face lost color. You don't know what you've started. No, Mara said, but I'm starting to understand what you did. Hester left without another word. Mara waited until the buggy vanished before sitting on the porch step. Her legs were shaking. Eli sat beside her, their shoulders nearly touched. At sunrise the following morning, a rider came through the gate carrying a weathered wooden box. The older man climbed down slowly. Miss Callahan Mara stood. Caleb Turner. He held the box against his chest. "I heard what you wrote." His voice roughened. "I think I kept the papers that prove she did it to us too." Caleb Turner set the wooden box on Mara's kitchen table as though he were laying down something that had been heavy for years. The lid was warped. One hinge had been repaired with a strip of leather. Inside were receipts, loan notices, copies of filings, and yellowed letters tied in bundles with string. Mara stood across from him. Ely remained near the stove, silent. Caleb removed his hat. "Hester bought our note 3 years ago," he said. 2 months later, she said the terms had changed. Mara opened the first bundle. The pattern was already familiar. Original amount, original interest, original payment schedule. Then another document appeared 6 months later. New language, new penalties, a demand for full payment. "Did you sign this?" Mara asked. "No. Your wife, no." "Did anybody explain the change?" Caleb shook his head. "I went to the county clerk, filed a challenge. Clerk told me there was a problem with the paperwork, said to come back the following week." His mouth tightened. Following week became another, then another. By the time I got anything before a judge, Hester already had possession. Mara looked at him. "What happened to your family?" "My wife went to her sister's. I hired on with another cattle outfit." He swallowed. "My boy thinks I lost the ranch because I wasn't man enough to keep it." Eli's expression changed slightly. Mara understood that wound. She had carried its twin for 2 years. "You kept the papers," she said. "My wife made me. Good woman. Better than I deserved." Mara began arranging the documents. By noon, Clara Kincaid arrived with Ruth Barrett. Ruth was a small woman in a dark coat with iron-gray hair pulled hard behind her head and an expression that suggested she had not trusted a pleasant surprise in decades. She carried her own box. "Hester told me these were worthless." Mara lifted the lid. "Then I reckon she won't mind a judge looking at them." Ruth stared at her, then unexpectedly laughed. It was short and sharp and almost angry. "I like you," she said. By evening, there were 3 separate cases spread across Mara's kitchen. 3 families, 3 original agreements, 3 later modifications, same company, same methods. Eli leaned over the table. "This isn't sloppy business," Mara said. "It's a system." The words settled over them. 2 days later, Nathan Morrow rode into Clara's yard so hard his horse was lathered beneath the saddle. He was 22 and looked younger because fear had stripped the color from his face. "My mother got a letter." He handed Mara a folded page. Vale's lawyer warned Mrs. Morrow that any public accusation concerning her former loan could result in a defamation action. "She's sick," Nathan said. "She won't come here. She thinks Hester will take what little we have left." Mara read the letter twice. "What did your father believe happened?" Nathan's jaw trembled. "He thought he failed us." His voice cracked. "He died thinking that." Nobody spoke. Nathan stared at the floor. "I didn't fail us, did he?" Mara said. The answer came hard and certain. "He didn't." Nathan raised his eyes. Mara handed the letter back. "Tell your mother she doesn't have to be first, what she doesn't have to stand alone. Caleb's here. Ruth's here. I'm here." Mara looked toward Clara. "And we're going to find out how many more there are." Clara's boarding house became the place people came after dark. Not openly. Not yet. A blacksmith arrived with a disputed equipment note. A schoolteacher brought receipts proving she had paid an account. Hester later claimed remained open. A widow who rented rooms had been charged $18 in interest, never listed in the original agreement. George Talbot, a retired postal worker, had $11.40 added to an account he had settled 4 years earlier. Small amounts, large amounts, land, tools, money, different victims, same hand. Benjamin Bird arrived on the 3rd night carrying a freight ledger. "Hester's people contacted 2 carriers before I hauled for you," he said. Mara looked at the entries. What did they ask, not ask? Benjamin tapped a page. Told them business from Vale Holdings would dry up if they delivered goods to Callahan Ranch. Caleb swore under his breath. Benjamin shrugged. "Threatening one man is gossip. Doing it to everyone becomes a record." Eli looked at him. "You willing to put that in writing?" Benjamin met his eyes. "I brought the ledger. Didn't I fear changed shape when it had company?" Mara watched it happen. People who had entered Clara's dining room whispering began speaking at normal volume. Ruth stopped clutching her box to her chest. Nathan began taking notes. Caleb stayed late, helping arrange the papers chronologically. Near midnight, he sat back and rubbed both hands over his face. Should have done this 3 years ago. Mara kept sorting. You thought you were alone. Doesn't change what happened. No. My wife lost her home. Mara looked at him. Caleb's eyes were wet. I'm doing this too late. Mara laid down the page in her hand. Late is still not never. Caleb stared at her. Around the table, everyone went quiet. Mara had not intended it as a speech. She meant only what she said. But Ruth nodded once. Nathan lowered his eyes. Clara looked toward the window as if memorizing the words. Hester struck back the following morning. Hartley's feed store suspended Mara's account. Her cattle buyer sent word that her fall contract required review. 2 witnesses received threatening letters. Then, Mara walked into her barn before sunrise and found every horse in the wrong stall. Nothing stolen, no gate broken, no animal injured, just wrong. Mara stopped in the aisle. She knew where each horse had been left. She knew because she always knew. Eli appeared behind her. He looked at the horses, then at the narrow gap beside the latch. She wants you wondering if you remembered wrong. I didn't. I know. Mara moved the horses back, fixed the gap, already planned to. By afternoon, Clara brought worse news. Hester had visited Reverend Josiah Bell. She wants him to speak Sunday, Clara said, about what you and Eli. Mara's face hardened. Eli stood from the table. I'll go with you. No, Mara, this is my name. I carry it. She walked the 8 miles into Red Willow. Reverend Bell received her in his study with the expression of a man who had hoped she would not come. Mara sat across from him. She explained Eli's work. The separate room, the barn, the legal documents. Then she looked him directly in the eye. You've known me 36 years. Bell shifted. Hester spoke to you for 1 hour. Mara, I'm not asking you to defend me, she stood. I'm asking you not to bear false witness against me. Sunday morning. The church was full. Eli stayed at the ranch. Mara sat in the pew she had occupied since childhood. Reverend Bell preached on false witness, on reputation, on power, on the difference between what people whispered and what a life actually proved. He named no one. He didn't need to. Afterward, 3 women who had barely spoken to Mara in years shook her hand. Hester did not attend. For one morning, Mara felt the current turn. Then the county clerk filed Hester's emergency debt petition. The maneuver could tie Callahan Ranch up before territorial review reached Red Willow. Mara returned home with the notice. I need a lawyer. Eli read it. A good one. My father knew one. Jeremiah Sloan's office in Billings smelled of leather coal smoke and dust. He was 71, narrow as a fence rail, with white hair and eyes that missed nothing. He read every page Mara carried. Then he took off his spectacles. You've got a good case and a dangerous enemy. How dangerous? Dangerous enough to know this county filing probably won't survive. Mara exhaled, but Jeremiah looked at her. Dangerous enough to make surviving it expensive. He agreed to represent her without immediate payment. I knew your father, he said, and I'm old enough to spend what working years I have left on cases worth finishing. That night at the boarding house, Mara sat writing to Ruth when Eli knocked. You should sleep. So should you. He stayed in the doorway. Mara set down her pen. Why are you still here? Eli said nothing. The barn is fixed. You could have left. Yes. Then why haven't you? His damaged hand rested against the doorframe. Somewhere around the 3rd morning on that roof, this stopped being just a barn. Mara's heart moved hard against her ribs. She looked away. Don't. Eli's voice softened. All right. Not tonight. He nodded. But before leaving, he said I wasn't planning to disappear. The hearing convened 6 days later. Half of Red Willow filled the meeting hall. Jeremiah laid out Daniel Callahan's original note, then Hester's altered clause, then Ruth's papers, Caleb's, the Morrow's, Benjamin's freight ledger. Hester's attorney argued that Mara had accepted the transferred terms by remaining on the property. Jeremiah answered with territorial rulings that said otherwise. Then he turned toward the back of the room. With the court's permission, I have Mr. Amos Weller present. Mara turned. Amos sat in the last row. Hester's lawyer went still. Judge Emmett Rourke asked whether the creditor disputed Amos's sworn statement regarding the original agreement. After a whispered conversation with Hester, the lawyer stood. We do not dispute its substance. A murmur moved through the hall. Judge Rourke read for a long time. Then he looked up. The acceleration clause has no demonstrated consent from the original borrower or his successor. Mara forgot to breathe. The foreclosure demand therefore has no legal basis under the original note. Behind her, Ruth made a broken sound. The proceeding is suspended. Caleb covered his face. The judge continued. The additional evidence presented raises questions extending well beyond the Callahan property. These matters will be referred for territorial investigation. When it ended, people moved toward Mara. Ruth hugged her. Nathan cried without hiding it. Benjamin shook her hand. Clara did not bother pretending her eyes were dry. Eli stood slightly apart. Mara went to him. We won. You won. We. He looked at her, then quietly said, I'm staying. Before Mara could answer, Jeremiah approached carrying a folded note. His expression had changed. Hester's counsel has made an offer. Mara opened it. Her entire debt would be canceled. Callahan Ranch would be hers, free and clear. No foreclosure, no further claim. Mara read the final condition twice, then looked across the room at Caleb, Ruth, Nathan, Clara, Benjamin, and every frightened person who had finally decided to speak. All she had to do was withdraw her support for the territorial investigation. Mara read Hester Vale's offer twice, the first time she saw the numbers, the second time she saw the cost. Jeremiah Sloan stood beside her in the crowded meeting hall, while people still gathered in small, stunned groups around the benches. Ruth Barrett was crying into Clara Kincaid's shoulder. Caleb Turner had both hands wrapped around his hat. Nathan Morrow stood near the back wall with the expression of a young man who had just learned his father had not died a failure. Across the room, Hester Vale sat beside her lawyer. Perfect posture, perfect gloves, perfect stillness. Mara looked down at the paper again. The balance on Callahan Ranch would be erased, all of it. The note released. No foreclosure, no further claim against the land. Freedom. One sentence beneath the offer required Mara to withdraw her complaint. Cease cooperation with the territorial inquiry and make no further public statement concerning Vale Holdings. Jeremiah spoke quietly. If you take it, I won't judge you. Mara looked at him. Should I know? Will the investigation continue without me possibly? That means no. Jeremiah did not soften it. It becomes considerably harder. Mara looked around the room. Caleb had lost years. Ruth had kept papers under her bed because throwing them away felt too much like surrender. Nathan's father had died believing shame belonged to him. Benjamin Bird had risked freight business simply by refusing to let Hester decide whom he could serve. Clara had turned her dining room into a place where frightened people learned they were not alone. Amos Weller had ridden back into a courtroom to defend a promise he had written decades earlier. And Eli had stood beside Mara from the first morning without once telling her which choice belonged to her. Mara folded the offer. Tell her no. Jeremiah watched her for a moment. You understand what that means. It means the ranch still carries debt. Yes. It means Hester may keep fighting. Yes. It means this could cost money I don't have, almost certainly. Mara nodded. Tell her no anyway. Something in Jeremiah's face warmed. Not surprise. Pride, perhaps. The old lawyer took the paper. Your father would have done the same. Mara's throat tightened. Don't use him against me. I'm not. He tucked the offer into his case. I'm telling you why I recognize the decision. Outside, late afternoon light lay pale over Red Willow. People drifted away slowly from the courthouse, reluctant to let the morning end. Eli waited beside the wagon. He knew from Mara's face before she spoke. You turned it down? Yes. He nodded. That was all. Mara frowned. That's all you've got? What do you want me to say? That I've possibly made the stupidest decision of my life. Have you? I turned down a debt-free ranch. For what? She looked toward the courthouse. For them. Eli followed her gaze. Then I reckon you know whether it was stupid. On the road home, neither spoke for several miles. The cold sharpened as the sun dropped. Finally, Mara said, you should understand something. I'm listening. This could take another year. I know. Longer. I know. Hester may try other things, legal things, financial things. I know. We may have bad winters, bad cattle prices, feed shortages. Eli glanced at her. Mara, I came through your gate with 40 cents a torn coat and a hand half the county had already decided made me useless. She looked at him. Easy wasn't what brought me. The horses walked on. Eli's voice lowered. I'd rather stand beside you in a hard life than anywhere else in an easy one. Mara felt something inside her finally stop resisting. Not surrender. Something better. She looked ahead at the road. You remember what I said the first day? I remember most things you say when you grab my coat. That wasn't what I asked. Yes, she turned toward him. The position. Eli went still. For once, Mara watched him struggle for words. She almost enjoyed it. Still interested, she asked. His mouth moved nearly a smile. If that job's still available, I'd like to apply. Mara considered him. References. One retired banker, questionable. One territorial lawyer, old. One widow who threatened me with a broom because I called you stubborn. That would be Ruth. Yes. Anyone else, about 2 months of fence posts. One rebuilt barn and every horse on your property. Mara looked away because she was smiling. You understand the hand is still damaged. Eli lifted it. Hasn't improved. Work will stay hard, I noticed. You snore. So do you. Mara snapped her head toward him. I do not. Eli laughed. The sound followed them all the way home. Nothing outward changed the following morning. That mattered. They ate before sunrise, checked cattle, mended the western fence, argued about whether a post needed replacing. Mara believed it did. Eli believed it would last another winter. Mara replaced it while he was checking wire farther down. When he came back, he looked at the new post. You waited until I left. You were wrong. We'll never know. I know. The ordinary work held them while whatever had begun between them settled into its proper shape. Mara discovered slowly that she had never truly preferred being alone. She had preferred not being disappointed. Those were different things. Depending on Eli frightened her because it gave the world something new to take. She did it anyway. 3 weeks later, the first real snow came down from the mountains. Mara and Eli were in the barn trying to separate a bad-tempered steer from the rest of the herd. Left, Mara said. I am left. Your other left. I only have 2. The steer drove against the gate. Eli caught the rail. Mara Callahan. Not now. Mara, this animal weighs 900 pounds and hates us. The steer can wait. The steer absolutely cannot. I want to marry you. Mara stopped. Apparently so did the steer. Eli stood across the stall, breath clouding between them. I was going to find a better moment. Mara stared at him. Then I realized there isn't one. He gestured toward the barn. This is the life. Cold mornings, cattle, broken fences, bills, bad weather. You telling me I measured something wrong when I didn't. You usually did. I'm asking for all of it. His voice softened. Not the Sunday version, the real one. Mara looked at him for a long moment. Yes. Eli blinked. Yes. Yes. The steer slammed into the gate. Mara grabbed the rail. Now move. Eli was grinning like an idiot as they wrestled the animal back into the pen. They married in December. Reverend Josiah Bell performed the ceremony. Clara organized the food. Ruth wore her best blue dress. Caleb sat with his wife. Jeremiah came from Billings. Benjamin arrived later at the ranch supper carrying coffee and a carved wooden horse. He claimed was for the house, though Mara suspected it was meant to make Eli jealous of the craftsmanship. Amos Weller could not travel through the heavy snow. He sent a letter instead. Mara opened it after everyone left. There was only one sentence. Your father would have shaken his hand. Mara cried then. Not politely, not for 3 controlled seconds. Years came out. Daniel, the ranch, the loneliness. Every Sunday, she had sat alone. Every time someone had looked at her and decided what she deserved. Eli sat beside her. He did not tell her everything was all right. He did not ask her to stop. He put one arm around her and let her cry until there was nothing left to defend. By February, the territorial investigation had found 12 accounts containing unauthorized changes or unsupported charges. Hester Vale did not go to prison. Jeremiah had warned them not to expect a clean ending, but Vale Holdings was dissolved. Altered notes were voided. Active foreclosures stopped. Ruth received a settlement. Caleb began the slow process of recovering his family property. The county clerk resigned. Hester sold her interests in Red Willow and moved west. Justice did not return every lost year. It simply stopped the theft from taking more. Spring came late. When the snow finally withdrew from the lower pasture, Mara and Eli rode the full boundary of Callahan Ranch. At Red Willow Creek, they passed the fallen pines that had become the barn's new beams. Eli stopped his horse. Eastfield could support another 20 head. 25, 20. The drainage is better than you think. Mara. I've watched that field 3 years. Eli stared at the grass, then at her. 25. Mara nodded. Good. Years later, Mara still kept Daniel Callahan's ledger. On a January morning, she sat at his old desk balancing feed costs while snow pressed white against the windows. The door opened. Eli came in from the barn. He stopped. Mara looked up. Something wrong, no. Then what? He rubbed warmth back into his damaged hand. Just wanted to see you. You see me every day. I know. He smiled. That's the part I like. Mara held his gaze. Then she looked back at the ledger. Close the door. You're letting the cold in. Eli closed it. He sat across from her. Outside, winter covered the ranch her father had built. She had fought to keep, and they had chosen to carry together. Inside, the accounts still needed balancing. Supper still needed making. Tomorrow would bring work. It always did. But there was another person at the other end of the table. And Mara had learned that being strong enough to survive alone did not mean she was meant to.